My next guest is a business and careers coach and sales enablement leader at Amazon Web Services. She is an inspirational maverick, making her mark with startups and tech giants experiencing rapid growth. Her true passion lies in innovating for women of color, helping them to navigate the complexities of corporates and to become change agents for their communities. Please welcome to Scale Yourselves podcast, Blaire G. Hervey.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, Janice.
Well, it's good to have you here. And you're in Hawaii, we've just been discovering. So it's welcome to you from exotic places. I'm just in boring London, I'm afraid.
Oh my goodness. Like I said, I had to get away. So I just needed a change of scenery. I'll be back in Washington soon.
Oh, good. So let me ask you a little bit more about the sales enablement that you do. Tell me more about that for, Amazon Web Services.
Yeah, so I've been in sales since I was 19. And maybe you can't tell, but it's been almost 2 decades, right? And I really enjoyed not only helping organizations continue to scale their efforts, but as I realized working with the team, I was able to continue to develop others and kind of elbowed my way into training. So about a decade ago, training went from, or actually evolved into this idea of sales enablement, where we could help folks sell more better, if you will, and not only providing them with training, but with resources, with different opportunities to increase their proficiency in their skill set. So that's what I do at Amazon. I actually work with leaders in the games segment, as well as in the digital native business segment. And I work with those leaders just to have a better understanding of what their account managers need to continue to thrive. And so I love the work that I do. It's the core of who I am. I do it at AWS. I do it wherever I go, but I just love developing others.
Brilliant. So then developing others, that's kind of led into working with women of color. How did all that come about?
Yeah, at the core of who I am, I'm a person who enjoys helping another person really multiply their skill set, discover who they are at their core, and get the most out of them. So any opportunity to do that, I jump on it. But when I see that there are barriers and I see that there are, intentional challenges, institutional and systematic challenges as well, I think about how can we break that system? How can we lift these sisters up and give them an opportunity to grow, to make money, to advance, and to help other women as well. So when I was in a situation, I'm working for, some tech companies, a couple of lives back, right? And I felt alone, and I felt like all of my peers were predominantly white male, and they didn't understand what I had to navigate and what I was challenged with in these spaces. I knew that there were other Black women and women of color who were experiencing something similar. So I just reached out. I started having what most folks refer to as interesting lunches, and just asking questions about their experiences, seeing how we could connect and also make a change together.
So tell me more about what you experienced. What was isolating to you? Why is it an issue? Because there'll be lots of people that are listening thinking, well, there isn't a problem here. What is the problem?
Absolutely. There are things that are these buzzwords out there, like the microaggressions and marginalization and things of that nature, which are absolutely true. It's not a fairy tale or something that we've made up. But as a specific scenario or experience, you'll go into spaces where, again, no one looks like you. So in those situations, oftentimes people are not compelled to be drawn to you, to ask more questions about your experience and to help you go further because they don't see themselves in you. And so when that happens, that does become isolating. You feel like you're on a team of one. You feel like it's your responsibility to gain knowledge, to be the best, to be exponentially better than those that are on the team, because they have the support of others, they have other advocates. And not to mention, again, the infamous word, that the microaggressions that happen, which chip away at your esteem. You go into these spaces where you feel like you know your stuff, you've done all of this studying and preparing for these conversations, but people ask you questions about your credentials. They question whether or not you should be in those spaces. They question whether or not you actually have done your research or have done enough. And it could be, and it is exhausting. And so that's why it's really important to have a support system of folks who not only look like you, but who have lived experiences that are similar to yours.
And so having the support system is one thing. What about working within the organizations, what they can do? Because the thing is, I remember doing this course on diversity when diversity was relatively new. This is when I did my master's. And there was a woman that came in, I've mentioned it on the podcast before, from France, who was talking about diversity and was saying that, well, what ethnic groups need to do is training. They need to do the training. So it's more upon you're not good enough, as opposed to the organization, what they're doing is not good enough, really. So the organization needs to change, because it doesn't matter how much training or networking the group does, although it's really important. But actually, if they still go into situations where it's hostile, then nothing's really going to change. It's the organization that's creating the problem. So what's your view on that, and what do you think needs to start changing?
Yeah, there's a quote out there that I've read and I experienced in a presentation recently that said that we cannot continue to hire BIPOC, so that's Black, Indigenous, and people of color, but BIPOC folks, and expect those individuals or those professionals to fix these broken cultures, because what these broken cultures do is break the people. So it's not about the people coming into these organizations and thinking that that's going to fix your diversity quota. Because what happens is, again, diversity is something that is natural. I mean, we're all different, we all exist, but organizations not only need to be intentional about recruiting and hiring, but they need to be intentional about preparing their organizations for these changes. So it's much like, and I do not have a green thumb at all, Janice, so I have no idea why I continuously use this analogy, but I imagine it's much like when you begin to garden. You have to cultivate that soil. You have to get that soil ready for the seeds that you plant in it, or else the seeds will not flourish and they won't grow. And once they do start to grow, if you start overwatering, right, some of those seeds that are already flourishing, and you don't give enough food, sunlight, or water to these other seeds, then these other plants will not grow either. So those are things that we have to consider.
Yeah, and it's quite pertinent now with Black Lives Matter, that I think has had an opening up of consciousness that wasn't there before. But I'm very much okay. Let's wait and see what actually happens. What are the actual results? Because lots of companies put statements on their websites, don't they? We've seen them all before, and they kind of like congratulating themselves that they've done something. Well, actually, nothing's really changed for the people within the organization. So what do you think organizations need to start? What is the starting point?
Yeah, I mean, so honestly, I firmly believe in grassroots efforts. So I know that, folks of color, we are exhausted of, doing this education. We are exhausted at being the tokens. But what I always say is that we're not tokens, we're chosen. And we've been chosen and elected to do this work. And we have to rise up to share our experiences. Because what happens is folks who are non-BIPOC, they create these programs for us. They tell us what we need, or they tell other allies or advocates what needs to be done. If we're not speaking up, and if we're not creating employee resource groups or support groups or affinity groups for ourselves and sharing our lived experiences and saying, hey, yes, you hired X amount of diverse hires, right? But how many of us have advanced? How many of us are making X amount of dollars now in comparison to our white colleagues? How many of us actually feel like we belong in these spaces? So, I mean, I would say that that's one of the first things that needs to happen. If there already are folks of color in these spaces, we have to come together and we have to start making a change. We have to start doing what, John Lewis, rest in peace, used to say, which is we have to start making some good trouble. And we have to do that with intention. Organizations, when they're ready to start hiring us, they need to, again, prepare their soil, cultivate the soil, have conversations with their current employees and talk about the changes that are about to be made, talk about the impact that it's going to make on the org, and not just about the dollars and cents, but talk about the culture. So I would say those are two things that can be done from the BIPOC perspective and the non-BIPOC perspective as well.
Yeah. Do you know, Blaire, I've literally just answered an email, something that's been going on all day. And it's about an organization I'm a member of. And I was basically saying, 5 years ago, I joined this organization and I nearly left because, I saw on stage all white men. I thought, this doesn't look like me. I don't belong here, all of that. I stuck with it. And I'm constantly encouraging more Black people to join this organization, because then you can have a voice in the organization. It's all very well saying it's not like, but you've got to go into an organization, start to change things. So, one thing that I said, you're still going to have that barrier if they see a kind of sea of, and this is in sales organizations, leadership, when you see on the board or the executive level, it's, none of them look like you, then that is a barrier. And so one of the comments was, well, we've all been in a situation where we've been the diversity hire. I don't want that to happen to this organization. And I emailed back, I do want that to happen. I do not care. If I get into an organization because I'm a Black woman, I am going to kill them with my expertise. I'm going to start to open up their mind so they know that, the messages that they have about not being credible, capable, all of that, I'm going to completely blow that out the water so that it opens up the way for another Black person to come in, whether it's or a woman, whoever, a diversity to come in, and they're not going to think the same limiting thoughts they had in the past, because I've started to dispel that. The thing is, I don't care. I just want to get into organizations and do what I do best. And I don't care how I get into organizations. All of this about, we don't want to have a quota for whatever minority group it is. Nothing changes unless that starts to happen, because you've got all the mindsets that are creating all the barriers that are stopping all those people for actually coming, and they're more qualified. They're more than capable, but you've got to have an opportunity to prove that, really, not setting them up for failure. But that's only when things are starting to change. So it's so funny you're saying that. Literally, I just emailed that back. I do not care. I want to just get in. I want to start getting in and changing perceptions.
Absolutely. And, getting in, something else that I've learned, because I've worked for some great organizations and still do, once we get in, it's not only changing the minds of the folks that are in there. I love what you said. I'm just going to go in there and do my thing anyway. I'm just going to go in there and be Blaire. So let's be clear. I still have to compete against a Janice to get there. So it's not like they just pick some willy-nilly Black woman off the street. I still have to compete to get that particular seat. So that's one. And then two, once I'm in there, yes, they're going to see how I work, but they're never going to get another Blaire. So let's be clear. I don't feel like I'm setting the stage for every Black woman and I'm opening the doors for other Black women. I'm opening the doors for these other gritty people who have non-conventional or unconventional backgrounds, who may not have the degree, who may have, knocked on doors selling security systems to start their sales career and have worked their way up the ladder. I'm opening doors for those predominantly white male folks who are looking for this particular credential and this pedigree, and for them to see that, hey, we can kick your butt and we don't have to look like you. We don't have to come from where you've come from. We don't have to know your parents, and there's no nepotism involved, and we're still going to do our thing. But 3, we go into these organizations and we learn everything about building a phenomenal business. We take those skills and we go create our own. Right? So then instead of us having to bring a folding chair to these tables all the time and finding our seat at the table, instead we are creating, like that woman said on Instagram, we are creating banquet halls for us. So we're creating Black-owned businesses that are being ran like the Amazons of the world. I think that's what's exciting. Go in those businesses and learn how to run a business and then do it on your own. And then you can start it the way that you want to start it with the folks you want to start it with. So that's what excites me.
Yeah. I think it's, interesting that, we're in a global economy. Yeah. Businesses are selling globally. The global population has a whole variety of perceptions, ideas, looks, religions, all of that. Yes. So, your sales force, it's really important that your sales force can relate to the global audience, can relate to some of the issues and problems because of the special nuances that they've built up within their family background. We're all unique and different. So if you have a variety of people internally that you can draw on, then you're better able to service your customer. And that's what I find really exciting. Yes. I don't know what your view is.
Absolutely. I mean, again, knowing who you are at your core allows you to serve anyone better, right? So I am customer obsessed. I'm always working backwards from the people that I intend to serve. Hence why I work well in AWS, because that's one of our leadership principles. But if you don't know the people that you're trying to serve, then what is it that you're going to serve them? If you don't know what I like to eat and I'm vegan and you put steak on my table, then girl, we have a problem, right? So I think it's very important to have a global view of the world and of the customers that folks are trying to serve. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what practical strategy would you offer to enable buyers to buy?
To enable buyers to buy? That's a great question. I mean, buyers are always in the market. Consumers are always in the market. We are always looking for something to enhance our lives or enhance our quality of lives. As far as enablement, I would encourage, buyers to continue to do their research, which is something that we often do. And then when we go to where it is that we're ready to make our purchase from, we should allow those sellers, if you will, to influence our buying cycle. So take a moment to hear what they have to say. Take a moment to answer the questions holistically so that they have a better idea of what your entire buying cycle is, what your plans for, what your 5 to 10 year plans are, what your 1 to 3 year plans are, so they can provide a solution that makes sense for you, not only at this point in time, but long term as well. So, I mean, I just encourage consumers and buyers to continue to do their research and not put the onus on the seller just to sell you the thing, because no one likes to be sold.
No, and I think that's been a real problem in the issue. So I'd like you in the past. So I'd like your view on within the last year. There's a lot that's changed. Sales enablement has really kind of like come to the fore. So what changes have you seen in the way that sales has enabled buyers to buy? How have the sellers had to adapt in this virtual environment, and what are the key things you can take forward?
Yeah, I mean, they are having to be much more proactive and prepared than before, mainly because on a call, you have like 5 seconds, maybe 5 minutes to really get my attention. But if in this virtual environment, you have to set up some time for me to have a Zoom call, you better have all of your ducks in a row, because I am planning out my day, right? I'm putting on my makeup, I'm putting on an actual shirt, I'm giving you more of my time. So it's really important for sellers to make sure that they're truly prepared and that they're prioritizing the needs and the problems of their buyer. So they have a full understanding of what it is that they can solve for, not only during this pandemic, but what can help them continue to accelerate in their business long term. So it works both ways. So it's no more of these days of just cold calling and saying, I have something for you. It's your buyers becoming much more educated. So your sellers need to be much more prepared. So whether that's reading those 10Ks, reading the press releases, having a better understanding of what their competitors are experiencing, having a better understanding of what the buyer's customer is, who are they selling to as well. They're going to have to go the extra mile. And I'm finding that our sellers are doing a better job of that, because you can't just hop on a Zoom call with your feet propped up and, win me over with your personality. I need to know, what am I here for?
Yeah, absolutely. So who is your hero or shero?
My hero or shero? I would definitely say recently, and it's not just due to politics, but it had been Stacy Abrams for sure. I moved from the Atlanta area. That's where I started my sales tech career. And so Atlanta definitely has a huge place in my heart. But to see Stacy Abrams be so resilient, to run for office and not actually get the role at all, but continue to fight for voters in Georgia and sign up over 800,000 unregistered voters to ensure that we have the right person, the right leader to continue to lead us is phenomenal. It's inspirational. Mm-hmm. And it just reminds me again of those grassroots efforts when we as Black women and people of color come together and say, this is wrong. We need to fix something. This is our voice. Let's amplify our own story and let's put something together that can fix a systemic problem. That in itself is it's heroic and it's motivational. So I would definitely say Stacy Abrams.
Lovely. So how can listeners get hold of you, Blaire?
Absolutely. So on LinkedIn, you'll find me at Blaire G Hervey. So that's one place you can find some thought leadership, and we can share and exchange some thoughts. You can find me on my website as well at thecorporatestrategist.com. And I'm out in the world on Instagram as well as _corporate_strategist. So I'd love to connect with you all, or connect with you on even Clubhouse. So that's a new platform that I love talking on.
Brilliant. Lovely. Thank you for being a guest on Scale Your Sales podcast. It's been a pleasure learning all about you and, seeing your passion. So thank you.
No problem. I appreciate the time, Janice. I hope you have a wonderful day.